I've learned something about rich girls in glass offices. They never whisper when they insult you. They make sure the whole room hears. My name is Ava Morgan. I'm 28, a senior data analyst at Harper & Row Logistics, one of the fastest-growing supply chain tech firms in Chicago. I didn't grow up with trust funds or country club memberships. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment over a laundromat in Aurora, Illinois, with a single mom who worked double shifts so I could go to college. And the only reason I survived my first year in the corporate jungle. My dog, Atlas, a 3-year-old German shepherd with intelligent amber eyes and the calmest soul I've ever known. I rescued him during my last year at Northwestern. He rescued me right back. But that Friday morning, standing in the marble lobby of Harper & Row, I had no idea Atlas was about to become the punchline of someone else's joke. And that someone was Victoria Harper, the boss's daughter. Victoria didn't work here because she needed a paycheck. She worked here because her father, Daniel Harper, owned 70% of the company. She was 26, blonde, Ivy League, always dressed like she had a photo shoot scheduled at noon. And she hated me. Not because I'd done anything to her, but because I didn't bow. The tension between us started 3 months ago when my analytics report contradicted her expansion proposal. She wanted to open a new distribution center in Nevada. My data showed the projected loss would exceed $12 million in the first year. Her father listened to me. The board postponed her project. Since then, Victoria had been waiting. That Friday was our quarterly leadership mixer. Executives, department heads, investors, everyone was there. And because Harper & Row had recently announced a pet-friendly workplace initiative to improve morale, my idea, ironically, employees were encouraged to bring their dogs. I brought Atlas. He walked beside me through the lobby, perfectly trained, tail relaxed, ignoring the chaos around him. He wore a simple navy collar. Victoria arrived 15 minutes later. Her dog, a tiny white Pomeranian named Duchess, the kind of dog that lived in handbags and barked at its own reflection. She scanned the room, eyes landing on Atlas, then on me. And she smiled. Not a friendly smile. A predator's smile. "Well," she said loudly, stepping toward us, heels clicking across the marble floor, "if it is Ava and her security guard." A few executives chuckled politely. Atlas sat on command beside me. "Good morning, Victoria," I replied evenly. She crouched in front of Atlas, examining him like he was a used car. "Wow," she said, "he looks smarter than you." Laughter. Not loud, but enough. I felt heat creep up my neck. I smiled. "He probably is," I said lightly. "He knows when to stay quiet." A couple people shifted uncomfortably. Victoria's eyes sharpened. "Oh, I'm serious," she continued, standing up. "German shepherds rank in the top 3 for intelligence. Some of them can understand over 200 commands." She looked at me, tilting her head. "How many do you know, Ava?" The room went silent. It wasn't about the dog. It was about power. About reminding me where I stood. Just an employee. Just a girl from nowhere. I bent slightly and scratched Atlas behind his ear. "Enough to know when someone's projecting," I replied calmly. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Victoria's jaw tightened. Her Pomeranian yapped aggressively at Atlas. Atlas didn't react. Didn't flinch. Didn't bark. He just watched. Calm, controlled. Composed. Unlike her. The rest of the mixer continued, but the damage was done. By lunchtime, the story had traveled through every department. Victoria said Ava's dog is smarter than her. It became office humor. Memes appeared in the group chat. Someone photoshopped Atlas into my desk chair. I laughed along. Outwardly. But I've learned something else about corporate life. Public humiliation isn't random. It's strategic. And Victoria Harper never did anything without strategy. That afternoon, I was called into the executive conference room. Victoria was there. So was her father. And 3 board members. Atlas lay quietly beside my chair. Victoria tapped a folder on the table. "Ava," she began sweetly, "we've been reviewing your department's performance metrics." My stomach tightened. "We've noticed some inconsistencies." Inconsistencies. My reports were airtight. Daniel Harper adjusted his glasses. "Victoria believes your recent cost avoidance analysis may have overstated projected losses." There it was. She was challenging my credibility. In front of the board. Because of a joke. No. Because she couldn't stand losing. I opened my laptop calmly. "Which section are you referring to?" She slid a printed report toward me. "Page 47. The Nevada model." Of course. I skimmed it. And then I saw what she'd done. She'd removed 2 risk variables: transportation volatility and fuel surcharge escalation. Without those, the numbers looked favorable. I looked up slowly. "These inputs were modified," I said. Victoria blinked innocently. "We simplified the model to focus on core projections." "You removed risk," I replied evenly. Daniel Harper leaned forward. "Can you defend your original assumptions?" I nodded. "Absolutely." I connected my laptop to the screen. Atlas lifted his head but stayed put. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through the live data feed, the freight indexes, the volatility curves. I showed them exactly why Nevada would bleed cash. Silence filled the room. Daniel Harper's expression shifted. From neutral to impressed. Victoria's fingers tightened around her pen. "So," Daniel said finally, "if we proceed without those risk buffers, we risk a $12 to $15 million shortfall," I answered calmly. He looked at Victoria. "Reinstate the original model." Her face paled. The board members nodded. Meeting adjourned. As I packed my laptop, Victoria stepped closer to me. Her voice dropped. "This isn't over." I smiled politely. "I wouldn't expect it to be." Atlas stood when I did. Towering. Protective. But still silent. As we walked out of the conference room, I heard one of the board members whisper, "That dog really is smarter than half this company." Soft laughter. Not at me. At her. And that's when I realized something. Victoria didn't humiliate me because she thought I was stupid. She humiliated me because she was scared. Scared that her father respected my mind more than her last name. And rich girls don't like competition from girls who had to earn everything. That evening, I took Atlas to the lakefront. The Chicago skyline glowed gold against the water. I threw his ball. He ran. Strong, focused, disciplined. Everything she thought I was. I knelt beside him as the wind picked up. "You and me," I whispered, pressing my forehead to his. "We don't lose to people like her." Atlas licked my cheek. And in that quiet moment, I had no idea that Victoria's next move wouldn't just be another insult. It would be sabotage. And it would force me to choose between my career and exposing a truth that could destroy the Harper empire. The sabotage started on a Monday. Of course it did. Corporate destruction always prefers weekdays. I walked into Harper and Row at 8:07 a.m., coffee in hand, Atlas trotting calmly beside me. The pet initiative was still active, but after the mixer incident, the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations stopped when I passed. Slack notifications went quiet. Something was off. By 8:19 a.m., I found out what. My system access was restricted. Not fully locked. Just enough to hurt. Key financial databases, denied. Forecasting models, view only. Risk archives, blocked entirely. I stared at the screen. That wasn't IT error energy. That was executive authorization energy. Atlas rested his head on my knee, as if he could feel my pulse changing. I stood up. Time to escalate. When I reached it, the technician wouldn't even meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Ava. The restriction came from executive oversight. Executive oversight. Meaning one person. Victoria. I didn't storm into her office. That's what she would have wanted. Instead, I requested a formal review meeting, with compliance copied. Because there's one thing rich girls underestimate. Paper trails. The meeting was set for 2:00 p.m. And by 10:30 a.m., the second blow landed. An email blast to senior leadership. Due to concerns regarding analytical inconsistencies, the Nevada expansion model will undergo independent review. Analytical inconsistencies. That was corporate code for incompetence. My phone buzzed with messages. Are you okay? What's going on? Did you mess up the projections? Victoria wasn't just humiliating me now. She was isolating me. Atlas lifted his head from beneath my desk when my breathing quickened. It's fine, I whispered. It was. At 2:00 p.m., I walked into the conference room with my laptop, 3 backup drives, and every version history log I'd archived since day one. Victoria sat at the head of the table. Daniel Harper sat to her right. Compliance and legal were present. Good. Victoria folded her hands. Ava, we've identified potential manipulation in the Nevada risk model. There it was. Manipulation. My jaw stayed steady. I welcome the audit, I replied calmly. She clicked her remote. The screen lit up with my model. Except, it wasn't my model. Key volatility multipliers were inflated beyond reasonable thresholds. Fuel projections exaggerated. Freight disruption percentages doubled. It looked reckless, unprofessional, almost fraudulent. Gasps around the table. Victoria leaned back slightly. Would you like to explain these numbers? I stared at the screen, then at her, then at Daniel Harper. And then I smiled, because she'd made one mistake. She assumed I was emotional. I was. I was prepared. Absolutely, I said. I plugged in my external drive. Opened the secure backup archive. Time-stamped, cloud-verified, blockchain authenticated. The original model appeared on screen. Then I pulled up the server modification log. There it was. User, VHARP. Time, Saturday 11:42 p.m. Action, manual variable override. Silence fell so hard it felt physical. Victoria's face drained of color. That's impossible, she said. Is it? I asked quietly. Compliance leaned forward. Victoria, did you access this model outside approved parameters? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Daniel Harper turned slowly toward his daughter. Victoria. She tried one last defense. I was stress testing scenarios. Without documentation, legal asked. And altering official board materials, compliance added. The room shifted. Power was moving. Not dramatically, but definitively. I kept my voice level. I have no issue being audited, I said, but falsifying risk projections to discredit an employee is not stress testing. It's sabotage. Victoria's eyes snapped to mine. You're accusing me. No, I replied. The logs are. Daniel Harper stood. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked less like a CEO and more like a father who realized he'd made a dangerous mistake. Everyone out, he said quietly. The board hesitated. Now. The room cleared. Except for him. Victoria. And me. Atlas stood beside my chair. Silent. Watching. Daniel's voice was low. Victoria, tell me you didn't manipulate corporate data to settle a personal score. Tears welled in her eyes. That surprised me. I was protecting the company, she insisted weakly. No, he said sharply. You were protecting your ego. The truth landed harder than any insult. Victoria looked at me then. Not with arrogance. Not with mockery. But fear. Because for the first time in her life, her last name couldn't shield her. Daniel faced me. Ava, I owe you an apology. I nodded once. I appreciate that. He exhaled heavily. There will be consequences. I didn't respond. Because consequences weren't mine to decide. By Friday, an internal memo was released. Victoria Harper was stepping down from operational oversight pending investigation. Corporate phrasing. But everyone knew what it meant. Her access was revoked. Her expansion proposal terminated. The independent audit cleared my department entirely. My system privileges were restored with additional authority. And then something unexpected happened. Daniel Harper called me into his office. Alone. No board. No compliance. Just him. Atlas lay calmly near the window. Daniel poured 2 coffees himself. Not an assistant. Not a secretary. Him. That was my mistake, he said quietly. I've spent years building this company, but I confused loyalty to family with competence. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was an offer. Director of Strategic Risk. Reporting directly to him. It wasn't just a promotion. It was power. I looked at him carefully. Why me? Because you defend the company even when it costs you personally, he said. And because you don't need my last name to stand in a boardroom. I thought about the mixer. About the laughter. About Atlas sitting calmly while she tried to shrink me. I'll accept, I said. But then I added something. On one condition. His eyebrow lifted. The pet initiative stays permanent. He blinked, then laughed quietly. Done. Victoria didn't leave immediately. She avoided the office. Worked remotely. Rumors flew. But 2 weeks later, she requested a meeting. With me. Not her father. Me. I agreed. We met in a small conference room. No audience. No stay. No power play. She looked different. Less polished. Less invincible. I underestimated you, she said without preamble. I didn't respond. I thought if I embarrassed you, you'd fold. Most people do. I'm not most people, I said calmly. She gave a humorless smile. I see that. Silence stretched between us. Then she glanced at Atlas. He really is smart. I almost laughed. He is. She looked at me directly. I was angry my father listened to you. I thought you were taking something from me. I wasn't, I replied. You were just never entitled to it.